Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. Are donors and the conservative chattering class through with Donald Trump? With the January 6th show trial going on in full sway, there might be indications that the Democrats and the Never Trump Republicans might be accomplishing their goal. But will it be enough? I have with me Liberty Nation's senior political correspondent with me, Tim Donner, to discuss. Welcome to the program, Tim.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you. So you wrote an article for libertynation.com, and you just right out the gate, here's the quote. You said, quote, "But Liberty Nation has learned that one prominent conservative organization is hearing a common theme articulated by some 90% of its major donors. While they are grateful to Donald Trump for his accomplishments in the Oval Office, they most decidedly do not want him to make a third run at the brass ring, fearing he would lose again." What is going on here?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that there are deep concerns about the way that the Trump presidency ended. And those concerns are not just on the left, they're on the right, primarily in terms of his electability, more than the actual actions themselves, because I think most Republicans don't trust the show trial, the made-for-TV show that the Democrats are putting on in Washington, a long-running show, I might add. There's more to come. But of course, it's one-sided, but it is inflicting a slow drip of damage on President Trump. And I'm hearing this stuff from not just learning about this organization where the donors are getting really skeptical about Trump, but just in general in talking to people across the board, people who are involved in the political process in some form or another, who are just scared that Trump will energize the Democrats to a degree that no other Republican would. And therefore, he's damaged goods. That's the thought, that after January 6th, that he's damaged goods and that you could get Trumpism without Trump by going for Ron DeSantis. So, of course, he's the hot ticket right now because, again, he's the Trump policies without the Trump personality.
Yeah, but all the strengths, none of the weaknesses. But here's my thing, Tim. Like up until this point, up until I read that article, I was like, okay, I get that this show trial is going on. It may be doing some damage, but Trump will probably, if he gets the nomination, I mean, right now the Republicans could run a platypus in 2024 and still win with the way that Democrats are handling things. But when it comes from you, I take it seriously that this could be an issue. So my question is, how much is this really hurting Trump? I know you said it's a not so slow drip of damage, but will it be enough?
I don't think that the particulars from this hearing are as damaging as Democrats would like, but I think it is a reminder to Republicans, to conservatives, that Trump carries a great deal of baggage with him, and that he would energize the Democrats to a degree that nobody else would. Put another way, Jeff,
I see.
Some seriously involved Republicans are saying that Trump might be the only one who could lose in 2024 because of the baggage. You bring in a DeSantis or a Mike Pence or even a Nikki Haley or a Mike Pompeo, they can bring the Trump agenda without the personality. And so it makes sense to a lot of donors now that DeSantis would become the focus of attention.
You know, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with me. I mean, when I assess the situation, I think either Trump or DeSantis would win in 2024, but the chances are a little bit lower if it's Trump because of what you just said. I mean, Trump does have more baggage. He actually was in office. And while a lot of people think he did a good job, I mean, he has stuff that people can pick at, whereas with DeSantis, not so much. I mean, Florida's done pretty well under DeSantis, so I think it's more likely. But what about the chattering class? So what about the conservative media? You brought up Fox News. I mean, do you see them kind of pulling away too, or how are they managing this?
Absolutely, I do. Now, look, this is not a universally agreed upon opinion. that Fox News is starting to slowly move away from Trump. But you look at some of the people who've been most praised, who have praised him the most over the years on Fox News. A guy like Brian Kilmeade says, I think how you lose in life defines you, and that's not supposed to be a compliment. Piers Morgan has defended Trump over the years and now is saying that DeSantis is the man. Even mild-mannered Martha McCallum said there's a stunning lack of evidence for Trump's claims of fraud. And then Brett Baer completely bought the Cassidy Hutchinson testimony and said that, essentially he said things about Trump that you'd never heard him say before. And of course, Andrew McCarthy as well has questioned Trump's fitness for office and said that Hutchinson's testimony was devastating. So you can see a alternative structure starting to form, in my opinion, at Fox, which will be pushing DeSantis more than Trump. It's a logical bailout position if you think about it. If they simply abandon Trump for nobody in particular, that would be big trouble for Fox News. But if they transition from Trump toward DeSantis, then they can't be accused of abandoning their conservative bona fides, so to speak.
Yeah, and it seems like from their point of view, the more reasonable gamble would be DeSantis just because of that, even though, Trump might still do well. So here's the question, though. Even if the donors don't support him anymore, even if Fox News isn't supporting him as much anymore, the base clearly does. So will Trump still seek and even win the nomination, even if these people pull away from him?
I would still consider him the favorite for the nomination. But I think what's happened, Jeff, is this: the narrative has moved from, if Trump runs, nobody else will, because he'll scare everybody off, to now, I think you're talking about a Pompeo, a Pence, and a DeSantis who are thinking they're going to run whether Trump runs or not. That's a difference from where we were, say, a year ago. You're also hearing noises about, for example, Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, who ran an impeccable campaign in 2021 to score an upset win in the Virginia gubernatorial race. He's starting to explore as well. So I think you're seeing the signs of, at the very least, a competitive primary. Whereas months ago, I think most people thought the nomination is Trump's for the taking without any kind of serious challenge.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, Tim, that's what you just articulated is where I've been standing up until this point, but I'm starting to rethink it now based on what you're saying. I'm not so sure now, but that it's that clear cut that if Trump runs, nobody else will. Maybe some people are smelling some blood in the water, seeing some vulnerabilities. I think a lot of it's going to depend on how these hearings shake out.
Well, I think, look, the numbers continue to be surprisingly high for Trump in terms of his approval and how we would do head to head against this president. Biden, Trump is ahead in most of the head to head polling of the two. But when it comes down to it, the question sort of centers around one thing, Jeff, which is how do non-Trump hardcore supporters in the middle, the more moderate suburban voters in the Republican Party, how do they view Trump at this point? Do they see his policy far more favorably now because they have a comparison to the disaster that followed in terms of policy? Will that overwhelm the personality defects that people saw that are attributed to his loss in 2020? That's the question. Now, you do have a head-to-head policy versus policy. You can look at the economy. You can look at the border. You can look at COVID. You can look at crime. You can look at all of it and compare head to head. And on that count, Trump has been strengthened since he left. The big question is really how the softer Republicans really think about January 6th.
Yeah, I agree. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. Basically, it's going to be, I mean, will these hearings do enough damage to scuttle his run? But we'll be keeping an eye on it, and we'll see what happens. And I'm sure we'll be having more of these conversations later on. But thanks for joining the program, Tim.
You're welcome. And I'll just add one final thing, Jeff, that I think it has the possibility, these hearings, of being so one-sided that it could possibly strengthen Trump's hand, because it's further demonstration that the establishment is just out to get him. That said, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Great. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser, or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thank you for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
Daily tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.